you propose be done in terms of managing these monies or following through to make sure that monies are not spent beyond the limit that's given in the Electoral Act?
Like already existed, there's a limit on campaign spending. You have a limit of about 1 billion for president, 200 million for governor, about, let's go down to Senate, about 40 million, State House of Assembly, 5 million, chairman, 5 million, I think also, councillor, 1 million. The problem of why this cannot be managed is that there is no clear place between the new Electoral Act or the old one that empowers anyone to enforce such things. So there's no law enforcement agency mandated to enforce this. It just says when they ask campaign funds for this should be this, and it doesn't. There's no enforcement. So one of our problems, which drags us back to most of the problems within the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is the enforcement. As long as there's nobody to enforce this thing, it will continue to be a charade.
Huh. Interesting. Let me come to you, Andy. You are one of those people who have continuously screamed at the top of your voice about how elections should be conducted and, you know, all of the things that we've missed or the mistakes that we've made over the years. So I'm wondering, people have also said that the use of smart card readers, you know, the use of technology in our elections would help, you know, stem down some of the, you know, election fraud and malpractices that we've been experiencing. How well do you think that we can regulate this, knowing the kind of, you know, roadblocks and the issues that we've even faced with card readers in the past elections that we've had?
So, Marianne, first off, let me quickly say that there's nothing that is novel, nothing that is exceptional or worth celebrating so much about what the INEC chairman said. So if you've got an electoral reform today, it would take more than just the electoral reform to have a free, fair, and credible election. There's no gainsaying that, because if you had all of the condiments to making a food, it would take more than just the condiment to making the food really sweet and make it really very, you know, relishing to the persons who are going to eat it. That's exactly what you just said. But you see, it is very important to have the condiment first. It is absolutely very important to have the condiments first.
So in this case, what are the condiments that we need, Andy? What are the condiments?
So the condiment to making the food, which is not what we determine whether the food ends up being really very, you know, nice, tasty, and all that, is the electoral reform. Let's have that first. That should not be the argument whether as soon as we have it, it will take more than just the Electoral Act to have a free, credible election. Even a child that is born yesterday knows that now. So there's nothing novel in what he has said exactly. The point exactly is that Nigerians are demanding an electoral law that makes it close to impossible for all of the quote-unquote nonsenses that happen today in our electoral system. I give a typical example, Marianne. If you were in Port Harcourt, for instance, and you were at Waterlines, you would see that before they mounted the traffic lights there, people who came from Olu Obasanjo axis just drove through the Waterline axis without any care to whether there was a traffic warden there or not. Those who were coming from Garrison just drove through it anyhow. Those who were coming from Rumola just drove through it anyhow. But today, there is traffic light there. That regulates. It's not to say that it has reduced the nonsense that you see at Waterlines, but it has regulated the nonsense that we are seeing. So there's nothing exceptional about what the professor or what the INEC chairman has said.
But what,
haven't said that.
But what the INEC chairman was trying to say is that it goes beyond a piece of paper. It goes beyond the reforms. It goes as far as us making a choice to make these changes for real and not just saying, okay, well, we now have an election reform. Okay, this means that we're going to have free, fair, credible elections. He's saying that we all have to participate. All hands have to be on deck for this to work.
Absolutely. Nobody's saying no to that, but give us the reform first. Mary, have you asked yourself the question, why is it that the elites, the politicians, for this long have been refusing to give us a reformed electoral law? And when we say reformed electoral law, we are saying that they should look at it holistically. Everything, including the spending and how to manage it, how to control it. Everything, including the technology, should be all incorporated into this electoral reform. You see, if we have been cooking this food for this long, Marianne, if you had been in the kitchen for 3 hours and you brought something that was close to, a noodles that you can take 5 minutes to make, people who eat it will look at you and say that you just wasted your time. If we have been cooking this electoral reform and we bring it and we do not have systems within it that can check all of the shortcomings that we have seen with the ones that we have had, if we do not have these systems within it, then it's not used in the first place to have an electoral law.
All right,
as I speak with you, my colleague has just talked about.
Let me just hold that thought, yes, Andy. Please. Let me go to Mr. Jide Ologun. Mr. Ologun, you are a lawyer, of course, and my next question is for you. One of the things that this new act or this reformed act seeks to change is strengthen legal framework for the elections. And we know how cases drag in court and how this has also distorted our electoral calendar. And so now we have certain elections that happen after or before, every other state or federal elections. Do you see this happening, especially when we all know also that the judiciary, as we speak, is not anything necessary that we could write home about? So will this in any way change something or strengthen our legal framework in this regard?
Like it's been said, the amendment is seeking to touch on technology. And there was a test case recently in Edo State where results were transferred directly to the portal. And that helps to eliminate the manipulations and the interference with results from the polling booths and the collation centers. And again, we recall what happened in Kogi State when Prince Abubakar Audu died before the conclusion of the election. The law is also seeking to, touch on that, okay, if we have such a scenario, because that was the first time that was happening in the country and it became a big issue. In the future, the INEC can suspend that election, perhaps for about 21 days, allow the parties to come up with another candidate and proceed with the election. Then I've mentioned my great brother has mentioned the case of pegging the expenditure of contesting. And again, one other issue is you cannot, within the internal structure of the party, introduce extra requirement for candidacy apart from what the Constitution has provided, talking about the age, the education qualifications, and things like that. And I think some may be jittery in the sense that when these issues are streamlined, like Andy mentioned, then you have a good soup on the table. But it's going to work against those who are addicted to manipulating the system, because globally, the expectation in democracy is that your elections should be credible, should be free and fair. And it takes a lot to achieve that. I mean, you recall what happened towards 2019 election when a governor, sitting governor for that matter, threatened that if foreign observers unduly interfere, they will go back to their countries in body bags. So you can imagine the body language that expression presented to the world. Body language of desperation. So some of them may not be comfortable with laws that will simplify the electoral processes. Like as we speak now, there are some countries of the world that have adopted e-voting, even though some countries have dropped it. The vote buying also is another thing. I can tell you that the statement of the INEC chairman, it should not have been made. We know that is what we find in Nigeria. As a keen monitor of the last election, almost all the electoral offenses were committed during the 2019 elections. How many of these culprits did we prosecute? So, and that talks about the commitment to ensure that you implement your laws. But at least let's have these laws first. Then we move to the next level of how to implement. It's very important so that you don't leave any lacuna. What is the position on
the
deployment of...
Barrister Ologun, may I come in here? And that's why I posed my question initially. You're saying let's have these laws and then we can go... But we have so many laws in this country. We had laws while election malpractices were going on. We had laws in 2019 when all of the things that were happening in Lagos, in some parts of Lagos on the day of election was happening. I mean, what have we done with those laws that we've had before now? Even though we're going to strengthen those laws, what is the judiciary going to do on their part to make sure that there's no lacuna, there are no loopholes that these so-called politicians can capitalize on?
Arms of government, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative arm, and they all collaborate to govern the country. And I quite agree with you. If you have laws you are not implementing,
oh dear,
it's as bad as you don't have laws. And I also agree with you that we have so many laws in Nigeria. I recall there was an American president who said, we will reduce the number of laws we have, but implement the remaining laws. It's a big issue for us in Nigeria, really, on implementing our laws. On what can be done about that, it has to do with governance. Section 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended. It says that we can bring in all this, whether the abuse of office is within the executive arm, the judicial arm, or the legislative arm. We have to abolish corruption. But we are in a situation where some feel comfortable with corruption just to satisfy their ambitions and motives. So this is where we are. And the next question should be, whose responsibility is it to implement the laws? The government, of course. Not Jide Ologun. We can only be partakers in administering the justice. But when we talk about implementing the laws, it is the business of the government. So when the government is ready to be sincere and sanitize the society that are just hanging there, some of us are still asking what is happening to the Wadume case now. What has happened to the NDDC case of Akpabio, of your mind? What is happening in the case of Minor? Several cases like that. And we have said it, when you investigation, diligent prosecution, and a committed judiciary. And I think we still need that commitment. And that brings us back to what the chairman of INEC said. If we are committed to the spirit of the laws we have, this nation will be upright.
All right.
That is my own position too.
All right. Back to you, Kunle. You belong to something that's called the Electoral College. Where does it come in the whole process? Because 2023 is just around the corner. And of course, people have started saying, oh, I have the mandate of my people. I think I'll be a better person to succeed President Buhari. And, it's also going on in states and federal constituencies. Where does the Electoral College come in here? Because it's not enough, again, to have a piece of paper or information that just people at a certain level understand. What about the guys at the grassroots? What about the guys who have not gotten enough voter education? Because I see that the INEC chairman is trying to emphasize that there has to be a commitment from all stakeholders, and those stakeholders include all of us. It's talking about the media, it's talking about security agencies, it's talking about INEC in itself, it's talking about CSOs. Where does the Electoral College come in here?
Okay, our job within the Electoral College has mainly been what we call politeracy. And what we refer to as politeracy is political literacy of Nigerians. We first understand that it's most paramount. Before you even take any step in Nigeria, it is most paramount for people to understand exactly what politics is. Now, in Nigeria, we have some hoaxes and myths within politics, which has become a mainstay. Like maybe a small party a big party telling you a vote for a small party is a vote for the other party that is in opposition against them, which is not true, because you still find those two big parties going ahead to hypocritically try to buy votes. And then we've noticed that people within the Senate, running for office in the Senate or running for legislative office, running for legislative office, come out and say, I will give you roads, I'll do this, which is not within their jurisdiction, regardless of the constituency projects, which of course people in the legislative now have, kidnapping the powers of the local government. So we spent a lot of time on educating. The Electoral College has educated as of now over 7,000 people. We plan to move that number up to about 100,000 this year. We're also making moves towards the grassroots in ways in changing some of our program, literacy programs into Hausa, and where we should soon seal a deal with a very big Hausa media station. And we already have some on radio stations going on around the world, which tend to tell people what these things are, what campaigns, what people can say during campaigns and what they can't say during campaigns. Most of all, make sure Nigerians who we have all agreed, regardless of our educational levels in Nigeria, a lot of Nigerians are politically illiterate. So the key within the Electoral College is to change that narrative. And we're really doing a lot to make sure that we've worked in that system. And we also are looking at a key point of even also, pushing forward debates. We organized the virtual Lagos East senatorial election, by-election debate. And, at that thing, any candidate that was there would tell you, wasn't asked the average, are you going to provide roads? Are you going to provide? No, we were talking about bills, how to lobby across things. And, slowly we intend to change the narrative. It's a long job, it's a long road, but we're dedicated and committed to making sure it's possible.
Interesting. Back to you, Andy. The commitment of stakeholders here again. We talk on the radio every day. We talk on TV. We're analyzing about what people need to know, what people need to do. All hands being on deck, we never really get to hear about these government agencies who are saddled with the responsibility of making sure that people are educated enough to be ready, prepare them for elections, or know what to do, where to go, what questions to ask. And I'm talking about the NOA here. Instead, we have other private bodies doing the job of the NOA for them. And I know, Andy, that you are from a part of the country or you are in a part of the country where elections are always very heated. Is there a foreseeable future where things would change for the best, and not just because we have a new piece of document, but that people have now become so aware that nobody can take them for a ride? Is there a foreseeable future like that? Is there anything? Is that going to happen anytime soon? And how will that happen?
Yeah, Miriam. So why I'm very hopeful is that we are going to have people who really have their heads on their shoulder get into political offices if you have a very well fine-tuned electoral law. Because the people who would be placed on these institutions that would enforce some of these things that make the system indeed really very good are people who occupy elective positions. So, for instance, this is what I mean. If you had a governor before who became a governor because of his war chest or because of what we call structure, all of the militants that could help him stuff ballot boxes and all that. So when that person becomes a governor, is unable to use the institutions of state to enforce things that would be for the better of the society. Imagine if you now have somebody who indeed, because of the electoral law, is elected to become a governor, and is somebody who the people see that has capacity to be able to deliver. Once that person is elected, he will be able to push the institutions to do the things that will be for the good of the society. This is exactly the point that we are making. We are not saying that once this electoral law is given us, that automatically is going to be uhuru, that the country is going to be running, on autopilot, that we will then have good roads, we will then have great hospitals, we will then have all of the 9 cities of life. We're not saying that. But we are saying that the likelihood to then elect people who indeed have capacity and have knowledge to change society will be higher than what we have today.
All right,
because
Andy,
what we have today is just a bunch of... Yes, please.
We were out of time, so I'll quickly just pose my last question to Dr. Ologun. Quickly, Barrister Ologun, I beg your pardon. Quickly, political parties have a major role to play in all of this. In fact, the onus is majorly on them. And of course, we the people make up these political parties. And, how do we hope to help, or what do we the people do to make sure that political parties keep their part of the bargain? In other words, internal party politics can also affect the outcome of elections in general and also affect the will of the people. So if the internal party politics is already flawed, it means that the major general elections in itself will be totally flawed, and the people might not necessarily have the person that they would have wanted to vote, but it's the person that the party has decided to field because of one interest or the other.
My global advice is that we allow righteousness. And what I mean by that is that we should exalt governance above politics. Put those who can impact the nation positively forward, because like we have revealed from the primary level, it is a candidate presented by the party that the general populace will come and vote for. So, and they say garbage in, garbage out. Mm-hmm. So can we begin to identify those who are selfless, those who will serve the interest of the people and defend the spirit of democracy in the real sense of it, and differentiate them from the greedy ones who are only interested in the huge amount of money they make from politics. All
right, but we're having a little problem with Barrister Ologun. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Andy Apotive, thank you very much. Kunle Lawal, Barrister Jide Ologun, thank you all for being part of this conversation. Let's hope that those who are watching this conversation and those who are listening to us, we would be making better choices from now building up to 2023. Thank you, gentlemen, for being part of this conversation. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll be talking about our Ndigbo. Yes, the tussle for the leadership of Ohanaeze and the way forward. Stay with us when we come back.
What we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect them.
If you no talk, then go beat you.
Now 2,500 and they pay.
We can't talk about education reform if we don't decolonize our education system.
What we do not understand, we will stigmatize. Because it's just cultural. And I think it's just human nature.
They stop paying us salary. I don't like remembering it.
I am angry at Nigeria. I'm angry at this government which seems to be letting us down. I'm angry at us as a people.
In the process of struggling to free myself from his hand, he tore my pants and he raped me.
Yes, I commit the offense truly.
Young girl, do you know where you are going? I say, I'm going to America. I say, oh, now so that they talk, you are going to Libya. Which America?
As it then do mark our place, some people they die now.
This is Plus TV Africa. Big stories live here.
former Nigerian ambassador George Obiozo has been elected as the new President General of Ohaneze Ndigbo, the apex Igbo socio-cultural organization. Now, he polled 304 votes to defeat his closest rival, Valentine Okparocha, who polled 15 votes. Now, even though a leader has been chosen, there still exists a tussle for the seat. Another faction had chosen Chidiebe as its own president. So the question is, what's going to happen now? Joining me to have this conversation this evening, I have Mr. Uche Okuku and Fred Nzeako. It's good to have you join us, gentlemen. Thank you.
Many thanks. Good evening.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to start with you, Mr. Okuko. What exactly is going on? A faction within the Ndigbo social-cultural group. What is that about?
Thank you. What is going on is quite unfortunate and regrettable. We had wished that we do not pass through this phase in our history. But it appears to be inevitable. What happened was that some 3 weeks ago, an illegal Imobi was summoned by the former President General, Chief John Wood. In that Imobi, purported Imobi, an electoral committee was set up. The Constitution of Ohaneze is very clear that only the Secretary General can summon an Imobi in consultation with the President General. Several persons complained that the Imobi that was where this electoral committee was set up was illegal. In response to the call by various groups in Igbo land and in the diaspora, I, the Secretary General, as I were then, I summoned an Imobi at Owerri on the 31st of December. There and then, an electoral committee headed by Prince Richard Ozubo with Associate Professor Promise Okoro was set up.
Okay.
And on the 9th of January, an election was held at the National Secretariat of the Ohaneze. And the election complied with the COVID regulations that you do not get 50 persons to gather in one place at a time.
Okay.
Those who came voted, and then others voted through different social platforms like WhatsApp and so on.
Okay.
And a result was collated, and Chief Chidi Ibe, the former Commissioner for Information, former Commissioner for Youth and Sports, and former Commissioner for Commerce and Industries, and a holder of the National Honors Award of Member of the Federal Republic, emerged the President General of Ohaneze Ndigbo.
Let me come in there. Let me come there, Mr. Uche. So you're saying that that faction or that group complied with the COVID rules, they complied with the Constitution of Ohaneze in conducting that election. But then there was another election that was held, which also produced another person.
On the 10th, yes. The next day, being 10th of January, another election was held at Owerri, which was the chairman of the electoral committee of that one is Chief Gary Egariwe. And the election, of course, those who witnessed it had clear violation of the COVID regulations. Those who gathered in Enugu to organize the election, we didn't want much publicity because it is an in-house thing. And then here, you will realize that before the elections were held, 2 pending suits were in court. I had filed a suit challenging Wodo and asking the court to restrain him from setting up an electoral committee in violation of the Constitution. The former governor of Imo State, Ike John Hakim Island, went to court to restrain Richard Ozubu from conducting an election and several other persons. So as we are talking now, there are 2 pending suits, one at the Owerri High Court and one at the Umuahia High Court.
All right.
And 2 groups that claim to have conducted the election, that I can authoritatively tell you that the election that was held in Enugu complied with the Constitution of Ohanaeze Ndigbo.
All right, let's allow Mr. Fred Nzako to come in here. Mr. Fred, which election did you attend, and do you have anything contrary to Mr. Okuku and the election that he's calling legitimate and in compliance with COVID rules?
I think it is rather very unfortunate that some people who are not comfortable with the call for the Igbo race, for the Igbo nation to produce a president of Nigeria of Igbo extraction are the ones that are throwing spanners in the works of Ohanaeze Ndigbo. It is very unfortunate that Ohanaeze Ndigbo, that is a socio-cultural organization, has become a socio-political organization, more political than even political parties. So many things surrounding that election lend credence to the fact that Ohanaeze Ndigbo has run outside his track of keeping the socio-cultural interests of the Igbos to keeping the political interest of some stakeholders and some interest groups. I say this advisedly, and I have several reasons. Number one, there was no basis for discordant tunes. One faction being led by the Secretary General, who the executive said had been suspended, and that's the gentleman that spoke with you before me, Mr. Chivo Okuku, he was said to have been suspended, and that tells you that in all that it is political. The other group led by the President General of Ohanaeze Ndigbo, Chief Nyanwodo, in the hierarchy of our things and in the scheme of affairs of every organization, the President General is superior to the Secretary General. Yes, the Constitution said the Secretary General will summon a meeting, but that is in accordance with the instruction and mandate of the President General, representing the rest of the executive and the rest of the MOB. The MOB is a kind of nucleus organization within the Ohanaeze Ndigbo, which is like, in political party, it can be likened to National Executive Council, it can be likened to ENEC. It is a policy-making body of Ohanaeze at the apex level, outside the executive. That is the meaning of MOB. And then if eventually there are rancors between members of the MOB, that tells you that politics has overtaken Ohanaeze Ndigbo.
So let me quickly ask this question. I'm sorry, Mr. Nzako. Let me just quickly put in this question. What do you think is responsible for this rancor? Because you started by saying that it is a socio-cultural organization and now it's become socio-political. But of course, politics exists everywhere, even in churches, even in religious organizations. There is some form of politics, especially if you have to have elections. There will be disagreements and there will be people who come together for reasons of interest and the likes. Why do you think that this rancor has eaten so deep that you now have a faction in the social cultural group that represents the Southeast and all the people that come from there? Why do you think that that is happening at this time?
I agree that in every human organization, there are elements of politics. But in most cases, if an organization is a socio-political organization, a socio-cultural organization, it tries to play down the tendencies of politics. And but when an organization plays more politics than defending the welfare, the culture of the society of the people, then it is more of a political organization. It is now obvious that Ohanaeze has become very political. And I can tell you that the reason for that rancor is because of political interest of the contending stakeholders and contending interests. You can see the hands of APC, PDP, and other political interests inside Ohanaeze. Even the process of electing the chairman, the current President General, that is Professor George Obiozor, followed a process that I consider archaic, anachronistic, and backward, because I do not expect that Ohanaeze Ndigbo election of President General will follow the option of people queuing behind their preferred candidate, which threw up the problems of godfatherism and the emasculation of the wills of the electorate at that election. Because what now happened was that the state governors of various political states now queued up behind the candidate, and almost all the electorate and the delegates coming from the various states queued behind their governors. I do not expect that in this day and age, the governor of a state will be the first person to queue behind a candidate contesting for the office of President General of Ohanaeze Ndigbo. And that is where I tell you that there is more politics in Ohanaeze today than the socio-cultural interest of Ndigbo that he tends to protect. And that is not, cannot be taken away, very far away from the interest of Ndigbo to produce president of Igbo extraction.
Well, you took the question. You took the question right out of my mouth. Let me pose that question to Mr. Uche, representing the interest of your people. Does this not make light of your agitation for an Igbo presidency?
It does not in any way affect our agitation for president of Nigeria of Igbo extraction. I was only trying to
does it not show the amount of disunity and discord amongst the people? I might be wrong. Please correct me.
It does not also mean that there is disunity. It is only an interest in politics. People are only expressing their political interests and political cleavages and political intentions. It does not affect the unity of Ndigbo. It does not affect the oneness of the voice of Ndigbo in agitation to produce the president of Nigeria. It does not in any way. What I was only trying to lay bare is that people who are uncomfortable with Ndigbo producing the president of Nigeria are the ones that are sponsoring some renegades and some disparaging interests that will internally affect the oneness and unity of Ndigbo. But I can tell you that it does not in any way affect such unity. This is politics, and at the end of the day, Ndigbo will continue to speak at one point.
Chief Okuku, can you come in there quickly? Chief Okuku, we're running out of time. I was actually posing that question to you, so quickly. What does this say about your interest in an Igbo presidency in closing?
Well, thank you very much. I've never met my brother on the other side who is speaking, but I thank him for observing some things. But let me correct one impression. For 4 years between January 10, 2017 to January 9, 2021, Ohanaeze Ndigbo never had any General Assembly meeting. And the issue of suspension do not arise because you cannot suspend an officer in any meeting of Ohanaeze except in the General Assembly of Ohanaeze. So nobody was suspended.
Okay.
But let me go straight to the point.
Quickly, because we're out of time.
My brother, madam and my brother, I agree with the speaker that open ballot is unacceptable because it exposes the voters, the electorate, to intimidation. When a governor comes out and queue behind a candidate, you don't expect any other person to vote against that candidate because of fear.
Okay.
It's unfortunate that my brother who is speaking, they decided, I'm sure he's a highly educated person. What happens in Igbo land is that our brothers and sisters who are highly educated and privileged tend to leave the Igbo problem to those at home. I will urge my brother to come back and let us put hands together and address the problem.
All
because what is happening in Igbo land is unfortunate.
Oh, well, on that note, I want to thank you, gentlemen. Unfortunately, we have to wrap this up because we're out of time. Thank you very much, Uche Okuku and Fred Nzeako. Thank you very much for speaking with us. We are definitely out of time, but it's been a pleasure. Hopefully that we're hoping that the problem within the Ndibos can be sorted out, and soon the social-cultural group can be one whole body again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll bring you my take right after this message. Well, here's my take. Now, being called the giant of Africa or the big brother of the continent isn't enough for us as Nigeria. We must be seen and perceived as indeed that. And what better way to prove our growth and leadership to conduct free, fair, and credible elections than to make sure that it is actually done properly at all levels. We once pushed for electoral acts to be amended, pointing to it as the turning point and the key to running a smooth electoral process. But is that really what we need? Because if we can't be free and fair in our SUG elections in universities or our age grade meetings, even in our local associations, how then can we be sincere and trustworthy with our elections? I say this all to say that it takes all of us saying no to election malpractices and choosing to do the right thing. That is the only way we can have the Nigeria that we desire. I am Mariana Kon, thanking you for watching Plus TV and watching Plus Politics. I'll see you tomorrow on the show.
What was assumed to be a regular day for the people in Itafaji, Lagos State, Nigeria, was met with the lasting trauma of a 4-story building collapse housing an elementary school. This was one of the 43 building collapse incidents in Nigeria in 2019. The building caved in seconds with no time to escape. Some of the victims share their encounter as they live with the indelible scar of the collapse.
I tell from our teachers, they own that school. I tell for them, until this school have want to collapse, they not beat me. I tell for my teacher too. This school have want to collapse, they too beat me. When I'm writing, that school now collapse.
So when it still started bending, so our head decided that some people could come and plaster it. So after they plastered, it was not still straight, it was still bending. So I was not afraid to go to the school.
Àwọn ọmọ tọ̀dọ̀ tèmi dẹ̀ ni twins ni wọ́n, Táyé àti Kọ́hìndé ni. So inú àwọn méjèèjì, Táyé ni kíní ẹ̀ ṣe léṣe jù ló bá lórí. So ó gbabẹ̀ kú síbẹ̀. But Kọ́hìndé ó sì wà alive fún tiẹ̀.
Over the last 10 years, the incidence of building collapse in Nigeria has become so alarming and does not show any sign of abating. In Lagos State alone, which is Nigeria's largest city, there were 17 building collapses in 2019, recording the highest number of collapse of the 36 states, followed by Anambra State. Consequences of these building collapses cannot be overemphasized, as they include loss of physical properties, destruction of movable properties, injury and loss of life. In a whole, it has economic, financial, psychological, and sociological implications, as each collapse carries along with it tremendous effects that cannot be easily forgotten by any of its victims.
I was not breathing, I was only breathing sand. I was under the umbrella for 4 hours.
I spoke with experts and disaster experts who shared reasons for the recurrent collapse.
Our people are engaging in sharp practices. Sharp practices deals with the type of material that they are using to build their building. Look at the engineers that they are using. You will discover that some of the builders that they are using, they are not professionals. You get what I'm trying to say? They are not professionals. Secondly, if you look at the materials that they are using, they are substandard. The blocks are substandard. The integrity are substandard. Now, when we now look at where do they obtain government permits? No. 95% of them are not taking government permits.
The other thing that could have also been responsible for building collapse is deviating from what has been designed. For example, you could have designed a building for a story building, and getting to site, you said you want to take it on the additional floor. Most likely, you're already signing up for a collapse.
Items which are very important and salient in the construction may be omitted, and this would cause distresses in the building.
According to Ayinuola and Olalusi, building failure in Nigeria is attributed to 50% design fault, 40% construction fault, and 10% product failure. Of the many collapse incidents, occupied buildings are more affected than those under construction or newly completed. This begs the question, who are the builders and how skilled are they? Who shares the responsibility of building collapses?
I see one block, she have room there. And I say that this school, we are going to collapse. And I go up and I tell for our teacher.
Despite the signs of a soon-to-collapse building, experts say building owners and engineers sometimes do not carry out appropriate tests on their buildings.
If you don't maintain your building, if you don't use it properly, if you don't do integrity tests of your building, it will definitely collapse.
Engineering being a lifelong experience, we're supposed to move along with the innovations and the technological changes.
While individuals have a part to play in ensuring safety standards are adhered to, governmental agencies have also been put in place to ensure building codes are implemented.
We've put a lot of regulations in place to check and to prevent building collapse. Now, what are the things we put in place? We have a viable Lagos State physical planning in place. We have building controlling agency in place. We have the material testing agency in place. We have engineers in each of our local government. Apart from that, the building controlling agency has decentralized their activities in each of our local government, in each of our central district.
Regulatory body is also doing so much, having to curb so many lapses, and so many unprofessionals are also doing these jobs.
As the government officials grapple to fight against the incessant building collapses, as well as the engagement of building consultants and the adherence to building codes, according to IISTE, it's important that specific tests such as electrical services efficiency test, mechanical services efficiency test, cracks and dilapidation assessment, waterworks efficiency test and quality assessment are all carried out.
Primarily, and this is on a general note, we find that cracks appear on buildings, and for every tenant or every owner of a building, then you find cracks in your buildings, be it on the floor decks, on the side, the walls, diagonal cracks, any type of cracks that you see. It should be a good advice to give that this be checked out by qualified structural engineers. Secondly, you find for old buildings which have gone past, they begin with cracks, but the building begin to have spalling. Spalls is the chunks of concrete begins to fall from the deck, which is the floor slab. And people try to patch them up. People just try to do some palliatives, but these are actually much more than that. The causes are much more than that, and these are just surface protection.
The scars of collapse still dig deep in the psyche of its lucky survivors, who say they would never step foot in the vicinity where his elementary school was once founded.
I feel sad when I'm passing that place. I don't want to enter that place again.
I decided I will never enter the building again. I'm so traumatized.
The reality remains that major victims are those with no power or influence and cannot afford properly structured houses, hence are made to pay the heaviest price, most times with their lives. With the high number of building collapses and the level of reoccurrence in Nigeria, would this serve as a good enough prompt for all the relevant authorities to swing into action and bring the perpetrators to book? For Plus TV Africa, Irene Ubani.
Hi guys, my name is Baj Adibule. I'm an actor and a filmmaker, and these are my answers to these questions. I have danced naked at a balcony before. Don't ask me what happened before then or after then, but yeah, that happened. Off the top of my head, it would be Smooth by Carlos Santana and Rob Thomas. Love that song. The most recent lie. What's the most embarrassing thing I've ever done? That's the most recent lie I've told. The part is the fact that you get to live multiple lives in one lifetime. That's the coolest part. Kiss, date, marry. Kiss, date, marry. I'll kiss Ini. Love you, babe. Date Toke because I'm sure she's going to be fun. And I'll marry Bisola. We get along so well. I love her. Definitely marry Bisola. She's good to, probably good to eat me up for that now. You know, being a Nigerian boy my age, I am a Tanga just jumps out straight up, no matter how old you are. I've seen some scarier stuff now that I'm older, like I saw Hereditary like some months ago, and that was crazy. But I am a Tanga just jumps out, you know, so yeah, I am a Tanga. I think the privacy has to be the worst part. Unless you're specifying like an actor in Nigeria, then there's another worst part. But if you're talking generally, I'll say losing your privacy. I'm a very private kind of person. So the fact that sometimes I can't just dash out wearing anything I want isn't the coolest thing. What words? Brokos. Yeah, I just don't see how I can throw that in any sentence, man. I don't even know how I said it in the movie. Brokos, definitely. If I just see this picture, just describe it, I'll describe it. I'll thank God, I'll thank my mom. I'll thank, well, I should be married by then, right? Abby? Hey, let me don't put a time limit on it. I'll thank my girlfriend/wife, depending on which time it happens. I'll thank my family, my friends, thank my fans, I'll thank the academy, and it's a good platform. So there's this belief I have that we really don't need all these other things that we think are real in terms of those social, legal, and religious laws. What we really just need is understanding, kindness, and love. I'll try and spread that message. If you're talking about Nigeria, I still want to work with Pete Edochie. Come on, I grew up watching the guy. Except just one time. Just so I can say, yeah, I'm done now. I mean, Nigeria. But if you're talking about worldwide, the list is unending. But for Nigeria, Pete Edochie. So that's it on Plus TV Africa. I'm Badge Adibule. Hope you had fun.
Thanks for joining us on the news on Plus TV Africa. I am Adebanke Odunoyi. The Benue State Security Council has imposed a dusk to dawn curfew on Katsina Ala and Ukum local government areas of Sankera axis in the state. This is aimed at checkmating banditry, kidnapping and armed robbery, which has been on the rise in the areas. Deputy Governor Benson Abonu, who made the announcement on Wednesday, said the curfew would commence from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. daily. The curfew takes effect from Wednesday, January 13, 2020. He said the council observed that motorcycle operators had migrated from areas affected by the ban to neighboring rural communities where they were causing mayhem and urged security agents to intensify surveillance in those areas. He added that the decision to ban the use of motorcycles in Sankera axis of the state followed heinous attacks on residents in Ukum and Katsina Ala, which resulted in the deaths of many. A suspected operative of Oyo State Amotekun Corps has been fingered in the death of a 21-year-old man, Oluwatosin Thomas, at Inorlende area of Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, on Wednesday night. But Amotekun Commandant Colonel Olayinka Olayonju, when contacted, said he has started investigating as soon as he got wind of the development. He said he had invited leaders of the corps in the area for proper briefing and would ascertain the claims. He promised to get back to us as soon as he found out the true situation of what transpired. He, however, assured that any member of the corps found guilty will be made to face the full wrath of the law. Residents of Boni local government area in Rivers State on Thursday carried out a fresh protest. This time, they stormed the government house and Rivers State House of Assembly in Port Harcourt, the state capital. The protesters are calling for an immediate end to the attacks and killing on the Boni Island waterways by pirates. The protesters, mainly the youth, marched from the UTC junction on Azikwe Road to Government House, Port Harcourt, to register their grievances and to the Rivers State House of Assembly, where the member representing Boni constituency addressed them. Part of their demands is for the government to set up security checkpoints on the Boni High Sea and empower security agencies to tackle violent crimes. The Rivers State government in July 2019 launched a special security initiative codenamed Operation Sting, in which patrol vehicles and gunboats were donated to security agencies to tackle violent crimes on roads and waterways in the state. The Rivers State Police Command last week deployed 366 special constabularies to various localities for its community policing initiative, but the Boni protesters say there has been no improvement in the security situation in Boni. In a proactive move to prepare the planned COVID-19 vaccines promised by the federal government, Ekiti State has acquired 187 solar-powered cold chain refrigerators for vaccine storage for its primary healthcare centers in the 177 wards of the state. The governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, who commissioned the 187 solar direct drive cold chain equipment, which will help in the storage of the vaccines, said the facilities are delivered ahead of the COVID-19 vaccines and also expected to enhance immunization activities towards curbing preventable deaths and improve neonatal and infant and maternal health indices.
You would recall our proactive efforts in the preparedness and containment of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 through our various collaborations and investments in health infrastructure that included, but not limited to, procurement of the modular laboratory for COVID-19 and other infectious diseases testing, renovation of one secondary, the General Hospital in Ayede Ekiti, and 20 primary health facilities, with more still in the waiting list, and the upgrading and equipping of Obadejugbe General Hospital, which serves as our infectious disease hospital, for our people, for the containment of all infectious diseases. All these are to ensure that our people are safe from untimely and avoidable death from infectious diseases.
The Kano State government has recorded 26 new COVID-19 infections, bringing the total active cases in the state to 276. The State Ministry of Health made this known via its verified Twitter handle in Kano on Thursday. 26 new cases were recorded from 118 results received on Wednesday from the laboratories, and 52 additional COVID-19 patients were discharged, it said. The ministry said that the state has so far conducted 60,254 COVID-19 sample tests since the outbreak of the pandemic in the country. Total confirmed cases, 2,491, and 276 active cases, it said. The ministry said 2,145 patients had been discharged and 70 deaths recorded in the state. The ministry urged residents of the state to observe safety protocols by maintaining personal hygiene, hand washing, use face masks, as well as social distancing to stem the spread of the pandemic. And in other parts of Africa, surrounded by cheering supporters, Uganda's main opposition candidate cast his vote in the country's presidential elections on Thursday, as Bobi Wine, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, arrived at his polling station flanked by police in black uniforms, bulletproof vests and helmets. His supporters danced and cheered. Reggae artist Wine, 38, is channeling the anger of many young Ugandans who say longtime leader Yoweri Museveni, now 76, is an out-of-touch dictator, failing to tackle unemployment and surging public debt. Museveni calls Wine an upstart backed by foreign governments and homosexuals, and says his administration guaranteed stability and progress, including much-needed hydropower dams and roads.
Our teams are on the run. Our polling agents and our coordinators and polling assistants are on the run because they are being surrounded and they are being pursued by the police and the military as if they are criminals. We are confident that regardless of the intimidations, regardless of the arrests, the people of Uganda, who we have been calling upon all along to take charge of their future, to take charge of this election, are going to be vigilant.
The US, EU, UN, and global rights and democracy groups have raised concerns about the integrity and transparency of the Ugandan elections taking place today in the East African country. Only one foreign organization, the African Union, AU, has sent monitors along with an AU women's group. On Wednesday, the United States, a major aid donor to Uganda, announced it was canceling a diplomatic observer mission after too many of its staff were denied permission to monitor the election. In a statement, U.S. Ambassador Natalie Brown warned that the refusal meant the election will lack the accountability, transparency, and confidence brought by independent oversight. On Tuesday, Museveni announced the suspension of social media networks and messaging services like Instagram, Twitter, and WhatsApp in response to Facebook closing accounts linked to government officials the tech giant said were spreading misinformation. And outside Africa, Europe's top human rights court agreed Thursday to look into Ukraine's complaint against alleged human rights violation in the Russia-annexed Crimean Peninsula. The Strasbourg-based European Court of Human Rights, or the ECHR, concluded that Ukraine's case against Russia is backed by sufficient evidence and admissible for consideration. It wasn't clear when the court would deliver a verdict. Ukraine has argued in its complaint that Russia was responsible for a variety of human rights violations in the Black Sea Peninsula. Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea hasn't been recognized by a vast majority of nations and drew US and EU sanctions against Moscow. Moscow has charged that it rightfully took over Crimea after an overwhelming majority of local residents voted to secede from Ukraine and join Russia in a referendum. It has continuously rejected accusation of human rights violation in the region. The ECHR ruled, after examining Ukraine's complaint, that it provided sufficient evidence of human rights violations for the court to consider the case. The court noted, however, that some of the Ukraine's allegations, including its claim that Russia was responsible for killings and shootings in the region, weren't properly backed by evidence. Russia's Justice Ministry quickly issued a statement outpointing that pronouncement by the court. And in business, the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, has said that at third quarter of 2020, Nigeria's total debt stood at 32.22 trillion naira. The NBS, in a report titled Nigerian Domestic and Foreign Debt of the Q3 of 2020, explained that further disaggregation of Nigeria's foreign debt showed that $16.74 billion of the debt was multilateral, $502.38 million was bilateral, and another $3.26 billion bilateral from the Exim Bank of China, JICA, India, and KfW, while $11.17 billion was commercial, which are Euro bonds and diaspora bonds. NBS said Nigerian state and federal debt stock data as of 30th of September 2020 reflected that the country's total public debt portfolio stood at 32.22 trillion naira. Nigeria's total public debt showed that 12.19 trillion naira, or 32.82% of the debt was external, while 20.04 trillion naira, 62.18% of the debt was domestic. The document said that domestic debt stock as at September 30th, 2020 was totally 13.9 trillion naira. And